Go. Hi, I'm Kerry Mussington, the founder and director of Mind Over Matter Project, Suicide Prevention, delivering awareness around the underlying issues of depression. But today's topic, we're starting with boundaries. Susan, what did you say to us a little bit briefly earlier? Would you like to read out what you said again earlier? And introduce yourselves as you go along when you talk as well. That'd be good as well. Let people know who you are and what you've got to say.
Okay, I'm Susan McCree, and my field is hypnotherapy, stroke, psychotherapy. And what I have to say is that boundaries, personal boundaries, is a fundamental right for every human being on the planet. And it's your personal boundaries is your birthright. It's also your responsibility to have personal boundaries set. They're not hard and fast. It's as and when it suits you, because you're the person who you're protecting. So that's what boundaries is all about. It's mainly about you protecting your space, yourself, and your personal rights within any setting and at any time. That's what personal boundaries really is. There's good boundaries and there's unhealthy boundaries. So we can speak about the good boundaries and we can speak about the unhealthy boundaries.
Thanks. See, didn't you do really well about boundaries?
Too bad.
Yeah. Right, so here we are on the panel today is Nikki over there, who's an expert around her own recovery, addiction and alcohol, right? And you've done amazing, but you had to implement boundaries. So we're going to come back to it for a second. Okay, you had to implement boundaries. Even the people around you had to implement boundaries. And we have Fiona down there. Fiona's going to tell us her experience about boundaries, and Farisai about boundaries. We did have Lou here, who must have a technical issue and may be back, hopefully. So anyone want to tell me their experience about boundaries? What you had to do in recovery? Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, so so in hindsight, so I can also, from me personally, so I think so boundaries, so came down to respect, so having respect for myself, so what I would allow and what wasn't acceptable, and also so having respect for other people. So you know, so there's lines you don't cross, so whether it's just coming down to being rude, or you know, so I don't know. So I just think it come down to having respect for so your friends, your family, even so someone you speak to, so on the street. So so if you have respect for whoever, so then there's boundaries that you don't cross.
So what happens? What the repercussions of those boundaries? What did you find you was up against when you didn't have boundaries? What kind of things happened when there wasn't any boundaries for you?
Oh, so anything so when so because so I so had alcohol addiction, so you know, anything so I mean, so I didn't hurt anybody so physically, but so my behaviors so impacted on other people. So it was so me being selfish. It was all about me. I didn't have boundaries. It was I wanted it, so I'd have it, and so regardless to consequences. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm just looking. Yeah, regardless of the consequences. I think with myself, so we're going to do the relatable experience. The consequences of not putting boundaries into place is that you can be easily manipulated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. So it can be both both ways. Um,
Coercive behaviour.
yeah, and they easily manipulate. It costs dearly, costs us a lot dearly. So you, for not having implements, this is what we're demonstrating here. So you didn't have boundaries in place.
Mm-hmm.
That cost you highly, but it almost cost you and your family highly. That's a good example. So I'm gonna leave that example where the alcohol came into it as well. And again, because of boundaries, you use that as a coping strategy.
It was lack of boundaries, I think, that like why it escalated to what it did. I mean, so like at one point estranged with my grown-up son, so like my two youngest, or so my two girls, so they went to stay with my parents for a period of time. So because like it was just all about me and what I wanted. So yeah, irrespective of the consequences. So there was no set of boundaries. And so like to help curb that. I mean, so it didn't happen instantly, but like as a way to rein it in for a period of time. So like my mum like have my bank card. I mean, all the bills and everything are paid. I didn't go without anything, but I didn't have the freedom that I had like before. Say like to pop to, I don't know, Co-op or wherever, so like and go and buy like drink. But so like that was a boundary like for me. I couldn't cross that. So because if I did, I had too much to lose.
Mm, mm. One of the boundaries that you had was within your immediate circles, even your own friends put boundaries up against you, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so like you was like one of them, you know. Well, to put it nicely, it was like being treated like a little kid again. And so I really didn't like that. So because I was a grown like woman and being treated like so like a little kid, like I say. And so resentment then like crept in. And then it's like a big like wash of like emotions. But so like as time go on, so like you see that the boundaries are put there, so like to like keep me safe and sane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I had like mental health issues as well. So like, you know, like counselling, medication. So like that all like tied in, but it all started with boundaries. So like learning what I can and can't do. So to be the best person that I can be.
Yeah, and you done amazing pushing through those boundaries as well. You done amazing. I think you're coming up to 3 years. This is 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, and also yeah, I mean, so like, and also so like I'm partially sighted as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like in say recently, about a year or so ago, so like even though like I have so impaired vision, so like started volunteering, so like a charity job as well. So like getting out and giving back a little bit, but so like as having a bit of how do you put it, worth, self-worth. So yeah, it all like tied up anyway. So but it all started with having boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I can identify. So anybody speak away when you want to speak away. If you identify anything within this, even with myself, when it came to boundaries, if I didn't put those boundaries into place, or I didn't, and that's the hard part, is putting boundaries into place. That's where we can stay in a situation, an unhealthy situation, longer than we should. Sometimes when those boundaries, you want to implement them, but you seek and change all the time. You say boundaries, but sometimes when shoes on the other foot, there's control, isn't there? And so there's no mutual respect or mutual understanding when it comes to actually talking about boundaries when you're sharing the same arena. And some people don't give you the option to talk things through. And some people will say, look, if you don't stop doing this, then I'm literally going to cut all ties with you. But so then in your someone else's mind, thinks it's like blackmail. It feels like
Mhm.
blackmail, which actually fact is not blackmail. It's actually a boundary that somebody's trying to implement, for safety, for purpose, of feeling of emotion, that it doesn't happen again, or to keep safe. This is why boundaries are there, to keep safe. So give us some examples of how boundaries are broke, guys. Please, what did you hear in Nikki's story that you wanted to elaborate on?
Yes, my name's Fiona Martin. I'm a qualified health and fitness professional and massage therapist, and also I've got my own pet sitting and dog walking business as well. So yeah, boundaries is something I've only just started to put in place after all this time. I've not even I don't think I've even been aware that I haven't had boundaries. It's just been so much the norm for me. Since my first sort of abusive relationship, my self-worth was absolutely destroyed. And from then on, I've just had zero boundaries. So I've gone on into other relationships and accepted behaviours that that you just shouldn't accept. If I'd had boundaries, I wouldn't have put up with those sort of behaviours. But yeah, it's very, very, very damaging, and I have to have boundaries in place. I have to do it. But after such a long time without them, it's quite hard to something that needs to be worked on.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how do you work on them then?
So I'm starting by working on self-worth so every day I start off the day with positive affirmations, gratitude, meditation. So basically just giving myself more positives than the negatives. So basically building on my self-worth. And I think once I've built on the self-worth, then I will put boundaries in place, because I won't accept unacceptable behaviour. It's already come into place now. I have, if I have any inappropriate messages from men, I will block them straight away. I don't go. Whereas in the past, I probably would have accepted that sort of behaviour and carried that sort of behaviour on. I don't do that anymore.
Okay. One of the things I've heard on what you're saying, you don't do that no more. But when something happens and it's a trigger for you, you take that out on yourself. Most of us have.
Yeah.
And that's because those boundaries aren't in place. So you can be affected.
Yeah.
Most of us can, by a simple telephone device.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I still get triggered quite a lot, to be fair. Yeah.
So now that, I mean, we can normally have conversations with one another, but when we actually pinpoint how we are being triggered by a device, that's coming in as words. So who actually has the power here? And is it ego?
We do. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it ego that we fight back? Is that the inner ego that we have? No, you will listen to me. No, you won't do this. And yes, you need to learn some respect. Is that the alter ego that we may have within inside ourselves? That we're defending, our rights.
Yeah.
To being treated with etiquette and respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And understanding. Yeah. So give us not putting your boundaries in place is costing individuals their health. That's what this is what's
it's had a massive impact on my mental health, without a doubt. It's being in sort of relationships where I've not had boundaries and accepting behaviours that I shouldn't has affected my mental health. Big time.
You're gonna get to nitty-gritty in a minute. Susan Pharisee. Susan and Pharisee, not putting barriers. I mean, I don't know which one's gonna go first, that's fine. Without putting boundaries in place, what happens to you? And tell me some of the boundaries that you think should be in place that you didn't put in place.
Well, for me, I learned to put boundaries in place a very long time ago. I think I learned that first through my first counselling skills, and understanding how the counselling process goes. It's very important for me as a therapist to actually listen and not put my own feelings in there. So I have to have boundaries. Part of my boundaries is also because sometimes we can relate to people. We can relate to certain things that have happened to them, but that's their thing, not my stuff. So it's also being able to, while you're able to relate and listen to somebody talk, sometimes it's not good to divulge your own personal difficulty, because you're there to listen to that person and not to drown them with your own. So that's the boundaries. So I learned to deal with boundaries probably about 20 years ago. I think before that, I didn't have boundaries, and I worked for 20 years straight in mental health. And there were quite a bit of times when I got very emotional about things, not understanding why am I, to be honest, you get burnt out when you don't have boundaries. That's one of the things that I quickly came to realize, that taking on everybody's woes, stress, and you're not actually separating yourself from what's going on. So you're winding yourself all up in that. And that's when you lose your own footing, and lose basically your power, because it's power. In anything, even in the workplace, when we're talking about health and safety, you've got a responsibility to your work. Nobody else. You've got a responsibility to yourself first, then work comes in. So with boundaries is the same thing. That responsibility lies with you first. Your first priority is not the next person. It's not your children. It's not. Your first priority is yourself. Because if yourself isn't right, you cannot make anything right with anybody else, not even your children. Yeah. Even your children, when you have healthy boundaries, you set those boundaries for your children. Your children will follow boundaries. When we were growing up as kids, we weren't really necessarily taught boundaries. None of us was taught how to have boundaries. We just go out into the open world and we take on everything possible, and we don't understand where our situation starts and where there's leave off. So for me, even listen to you, Nikki, when you were talking and with relating it to yourself in terms of your alcohol, there's two things going on there. There's your addiction, which was your alcohol, and then there was also your boundaries, which is a complete separate thing. Try not to mix the two, okay? Because boundaries is really about you as a person. It's not about anybody else. Even if what your behavior was doing was affecting somebody else, that's up to that person to actually take themselves out of your. You understand what I'm saying? Because everybody should have personal boundaries, and it's everybody's responsibility to know what their boundaries are. So that's like taking on. So I made a list of things. So like we would have unhealthy boundaries would be like expecting others to know what you want or what you need. That's an unhealthy boundary, because what you haven't done is really allowed people to know what you want and what you really need.
Assuming.
Right? So you assume. The second thing is saying yes to things that you don't want to do. A lot of us say yes to people who might ask us something, and we don't really want to do it, but we have that, maybe that fear, maybe we pick something up from that person, and it puts us into that fear that we don't want to be disagreeable. So that's another unhealthy boundary.
Learning to say, and that's what got us, a lot of us, into trouble, not knowing how to say no.
Absolutely. And that is key word, Kerry, is no.
And this is
Yeah.
where the majority of domestic violence comes from as well, because we didn't know how to be grounded at the very beginning, and we did things to pacify. We did things because we wanted someone to like us, or we wanted to impress. We just wanted to help and be ourselves. But some of these kindness things that we did without looking at the boundaries, is that when you're in the midst of that blinking storm, or in the midst of it, you don't actually realize what you've gone and done, was to give too much of yourself, and to push your whole identity. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, and don't do it. And that's what's going on here, is I can do it, I can do it. So you volunteer yourself straight away of saying you're the one that can save whatever it is, and you can fix, you're the fixer. And then suddenly, when it's you, because you empower all of these people. When you keep giving away all your power, and you don't have no boundaries for yourself, you're empowering the opponent to probably overcome you or overstep you and put you and trample you down. So you need to be on an equal keel when it comes to boundaries. But you'll find that in domestic violence or domestic abuse, or friends and stuff like that can manipulate one another to get what they want out of it. And learning,
but that's emotional boundaries. That's another part of emotion boundaries. That's purely emotional boundaries.
Everything we do is based on emotion. Every single thing we do is based on emotion and action. And if we're going to have the emotion, it's because I heard your story, and you'll say, Kerry, have you got a lighter? And I'll say, no, I don't smoke. The guilt will set in, and I need to go and find that lighter. Oh, there you go, because I'm a people pleaser. And so this is the problem with some of us. We are so much of a people pleaser. We give away too much of self.
I used to be, yeah.
Yeah. And when we first meet people, particularly as women, when we first meet people, we are giving them our true us, really. But we give away too much. There's never no mystery into us. And so the expectations are pretty high. And when you don't live up to people's expectations, there's been consequences. And it's those consequences that create a lot of depression, a lot of oppression, a lot of fear, a lot of I don't want to hang out, a lot of rejection, abandonment, breaking up, making up. It's those no boundaries. It's like some people can say, no, I they done this to me, I'll never go there again, without giving people a chance to ever put anything right. But they've set their standards. They said, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I expect. Now, the minute that somebody's done that, they've given an expectation straight away. So they've already put a block on you, and they said, right, this is it, this is the way I want it. You don't got no equality in that conversation. There's no discussion when it comes to
so it's up to you to say what is and isn't acceptable, and stick to that.
You need to have often friends get together, they don't actually get together and say, hey, I want you to treat me like this. What you actually do is talk about your past experiences with other people, and how you may not have trusted them, or they've done this and done that. So when you meet new people, those new people that you've met have already installed what you've just told them. So you're not ready trustworthy, because you've just offloaded a story that didn't quite match the criteria of she can't even keep her friends, or he can't even keep her friends. So when you see that you can't keep people around and the judgment is there already, that's not a disrespect. That's not a level of disrespect. As people have set the boundaries, they're not going to have any nonsense. And so some people may not make friends quite as easy because they just don't want the nonsense, because there's been expectations. But even if the people that don't want to make friends easily, there's that expectation of that person as well. So they deprive themselves because of past experiences of people breaking those boundaries.
Yes, putting barriers up, isn't it?
Yeah, Pharisee. Yeah, it is. It's putting barriers up, and we do that quite often. We put them up, they get knocked down, we take it out on ourselves, we put them up again, and we're always forgiving because that's just our natural nature. And that's where we get manipulated if we're not careful to spot those signs. Yeah. Pharisee, your experience, hello and welcome. And Pharisee is now a book author, so we did turn around and announce that too. I'll get the book in a minute. Book author, was helping people around domestic abuse and domestic violence, I still think she is a very busy woman, juggling all of her jobs and self-development. And book author, I'm so pleased and so proud of you. Give us your experience, please, of boundaries. Can't hear you, but I can hear a dog.
Hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, ma'am. Yes.
I don't know why if I put these, people can't hear me. Anyway, I was saying my experience is that people struggle a lot with boundaries because there is a set of boundaries that are set by society already. And people will say, oh, you have to have personal boundaries and respect them. But when you do respect your own boundaries, they don't know how to take that. They then, like, okay, for example, I, as a grown woman, have a right to say yes or no to something. But then if I say no to something to you, and then your reaction is like, oh, she's just blocked me, and then you act wounded, it's like you're questioning my boundaries. If I say I don't want friends, I don't want more than 2 friends, that is my right to make that choice. And we shouldn't then have somebody saying, oh, you're setting barriers on yourself. If I'm happy with it, it's not a barrier. It's only a barrier if it's causing me harm and I'm not happy with it. Then it is, I'm setting a barrier. But people then generally say, oh, she's always in a house. She doesn't have any friends. She doesn't attend any events. She doesn't socialize. Yeah, there's something not right with that. Who are you to say that? If I'm happy with it, those are my barriers, whether they are stemming from something that happened before. But if I'm setting them to make myself happy and they are actually making me happy, they are correct, regardless of what anybody else thinks. That's my view. And I think this is why in society we struggle to maintain our barriers, because our barriers are bashed left, right, and center.
Well, that's also because we're not really responsible for anybody else's happiness, but our own happiness. So
yeah, but people
that is a boundary. So if somebody isn't happy with you being in your home, that's not your business.
Sorry, can we make sure you get here both?
No. I was explaining why a lot of people struggle maintaining their barriers.
Right. They shouldn't. They shouldn't.
They can't handle other people. They haven't learned to handle other people's reactions.
Absolutely. Agree.
That is one thing that we need to be teaching each other. Once you have made a choice.
Hi, sorry about that. Is it like phone call?
Okay. Once you have made a choice that is boundary based, you need to let yourself know that whether somebody else accepts it or not, it is your boundary and stand by it. You need to be prepared to lose friends, family, neighbors, workmates to maintain your own boundaries. I struggled with it from, if I can use my culture as a baseline to explain what I'm saying. When you are born in Zimbabwe, there's 2 things they see, either a man or a woman. Yeah. If you're a man, there's a set of boundaries that are already made for you, and you have to take them whether you like it or not. And then if you're a woman, there's a set of boundaries that are set for you, and you have to take them whether you like it or not. And how you get manipulated into always altering your boundaries is that there is threats that get attached to the sets that have already been set for you. Like, for instance, you're told, if your mother says, do this, whether you believe it's right or not, you have to do it. If you don't do it, you've disrespected your mother. And if you disrespect your mother, you're going to be either excluded in the family, or you're going to have, they pivot between, from 3 things. One, the religion, the tradition, and then the general community. So if you don't follow that boundary that's been set for you, you're going to lose your family, and you don't want to do that. And then religiously, you're going to be said you have sinned, so you will not go to heaven. You're going to rot in hell. Do you really want to rot? No. And then on the tradition bit, if you disrespect that boundary, you're setting yourself and anybody that comes through your blood into this set of curses that will follow your children, your children's children. And they strongly grill that into you from a very young age. And when you're very young, you have no choice but to believe that person that you trust, isn't it? And a child is like from birth to about 16 years old, depending on country. So you've spent 16 years believing this stupid thing because of these all threats that are attached to it. Is it gonna be easy for you to then say, now I'm 16, I'm a grown up, I'm checking that, I'm checking that, I'm checking up, checking that. It's not easy. And that's where you need these kinds of conversations, because then they actually validate what you're thinking, that actually I should have boundaries. Actually, they are my boundaries and I should own them. Actually, it's worth it me losing my mom, my dad, my friend, my neighbor to maintain my own boundaries, because my happiness, if I own my happiness, then I'm happiest. But if somebody else owns my happiness, then I'm gonna only be happy if they are happy, because it's almost like they hold a remote control in your life. And these conversations are necessary in different community settings, I believe, because one thing I have benefited from coming to England is gaining that freedom. It's something that's talked about openly. You have a right to say no. You have a right to choose. I remember the year I came in this country, somebody saying to me at work, oh, we provide food here for lunch. Yeah. And then the day before, they'll take the menu. What would you like to have for lunch tomorrow? And I'll be like, well, anything really. And the person will be like, well, there's this, choose. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I'll eat whatever you give me. This is a sign of what I have been doing since I was born. I used to be told, today you're going to eat this. All of a sudden, I have that freedom. I actually didn't know how to embrace it. I didn't know how to do it. And they used to say, what's wrong with you? Just speak. Don't you know what your taste buds like? Don't you know what your favorite food is? And I couldn't deal with it. And it was a matter of getting somebody who cared enough to actually explain to me that, what you're doing, you're not looking after yourself. If somebody is saying, I can do this for you, it means they can manage it. Why are you think, oh, I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to, I don't want to ask for this in case I'm being a bother. Why would you think you're being a bother if that person is offering? And these are some of the things, like even with addiction. You probably need somebody to help you with it.
Let's address that parasite. Let's address that last part where you said when someone, the polite, it's about being polite. When somebody's offering you something, you said, why would people offer you that if they don't? Now I've been a culprit of that. I know I didn't have enough food, or I know I haven't really got it, and I'm going to have to split my food. I'm really hungry.
Yeah.
And then someone asks somebody, I don't really want to offer them my food, but I certainly want to give them a little bit of manners. But when you have cooked up a big pot, and they say, no, it's all right, I'm not hungry, and you know they ain't had nothing to eat because they've been around you all the whole entire day. Okay? But then the politeness comes from, no, it's okay, I'm not really hungry. They don't know how to accept and embrace a welcoming choice of, here we go, I'm offering you some help. There's the acceptance, or sometimes people won't eat, and I have to look at this as well. in front of other people because they may, just may, have an eating disorder, just may. I've been around people before having an eating disorder. They're reluctant to sort of kind of eat behind, and if they did, they were doing something they shouldn't have been doing afterwards. So just maybe. I'm taking out of your conversation the words sympathy. That's number one that came into it. There's consequences for not doing as you're told sometimes, and it comes in the form of blackmail, or I'm unfriending you, or I'm not doing anything rather than having a conversation. Threatening behaviour came into that conversation that you said, and I picked up this. In some cases, when you don't put those boundaries and you just keep being manipulating and letting people do what they want with you, you can actually even face homelessness because there was no boundaries there. Okay, boundaries even with children, and I really want to get to that point as well about children. You mentioned a lot of issues within bringing up that Pharisee, and you've identified the fact that you're born into cultures of differences, so it is already set in stone how you should be. No different saying when you're born you're going to school. You might not want to go to school. I want to go work and be an entrepreneur rather than go to school and learn a skill here rather than go to school, but somebody's told you what you've got to do. So therefore you're on a time scale, aren't you, with your life, because then you get into relationships and there's boundaries and problems there somewhere along the line because of the lack of communication or understanding. So you'll find that relationships and friendships go through the meal hand in hand, and even work, not setting any boundaries at work. That's another issue. So how do these people set boundaries? Because it's about choices, but how do they if they feel they have no escape? Others, please.
I think generally speaking, even in the workplace, you can talk about workplaces have boundaries, but if you really go deep into them, the boundaries are one-sided. An employer sets boundaries on employees. If you don't do this, you get fired. If you don't do this, you get demoted, or you don't get promoted, or things like that. But we don't actually stop to think that when you go into the workplace, when you sign in a contract, it's a two-way agreement. You should go in with your own set of. I've never heard anyone in an interview being asked, what do you have to bring on the plate? I've never actually seen somebody who actually asks concrete questions to an employer. Okay, I have told you I bring A, B, C, D. What are you going to bring to me? Because it's a two-way thing. And that's where you start. They should know you also have boundaries. Yes, you've taught me your boundaries, but they should also know that you also have your boundaries. And if you don't start from there, already it's a slippery slope.
So this is a classic example, work in the work department, about boundaries, because I know people will say, will you work? Will you do any overtime? We already know somebody, without mentioning their names, but we actually know somebody is actually in that arena that's constantly working, trying to juggle their own business and trying to run somebody else's business as well. Constantly working, and doesn't know how to say no to the hours that keep being put on. And then they say, well, I'm the one that can run it. I'm the one that can run. I know what I'm doing. And see, now that's the problem, because I used to do the same thing. Didn't want people to sort of take over. I felt they were going to mess it up and do it all wrong and make me put all the hard work that I done. They'll undo it all. So you start to feel a way of somebody's creeping in on what you were doing. You start losing your own identity in somebody else's business as well, because you're putting all the godsend's hours on there. You're going to end up becoming ill, and they don't care if you're ill or not. They just want the job done. So where's your boundaries on your time management when people are doing overtime and things like that? Again, Fee, you run a massage business, and you are up against these kind of behaviors of people's perception of your job description. So let's clear this one up straight away. As far as when we use the word, I do massage therapy, there are issues here, and you are more likely than anyone to get propositioned, treated differently, spoken to, sent messages, and and you'll get that reaction back one way or another of disgruntlement when you do put your boundaries. Give us a prime example, and let's just clear this up right now for anyone that's watching this and actually sees Fiona. She is a massage therapy. She is not there for your dirty displeasure where you think sexual about that. That's not it, because one of the things about what you do is it comes with stigma. So go ahead, take it away.
So I've had several messages from. I had one guy, somebody in particular, was asking for a 2-hour massage and mentioned body parts, including groin, which isn't normal. You don't normally do that, and I just thought that was a bit strange. And 2-hour massage is a long time as well. I did a bit of research on the chap and found out that he'd been banned from some shops in Blackburn for refusing to wear underwear. So there was something very dodgy about him. And I did block him, and he was trying to message me on other if I blocked him on Messenger, I think he tried to send me a text or send me a message via Instagram. So I had to block him several times. And I thought I'd do a bit of research onto his Facebook page, and I had a look on his Facebook page, and he had photographs of women chained up. So it was quite a concern for me that I was really glad that I didn't have him anywhere near my massage treatment room. So I've since then I've had a couple of other instances. I've put a strict policy into place that I don't do massage now on men unless I actually know them or unless they've been referred by a friend. And I used to do mobile as well. So as you can imagine, if I'm doing mobile, I'm going into people's houses. It could be anybody. I can't take that risk. Yeah,
that's brave.
Very for a female, a lone worker. See, those that don't know it, please do read lone worker policy, and it's be beneficial for yourselves. Even if you think, oh, I can do this on my own, that's a really dangerous thing that you're doing in a sense. But we have to make a living with you've trained hard to put yourself on that course and to get that qualification. And we know there's a lot of stigma around that, but how can you keep people that massage, how can they keep safe? I've got a few ideas that I know I've given you, but I really would like for you to put that out, because these are boundaries. And I think at the end of the day, how do you keep safe?
So I for instance, if I have people that, they're going to get changed, aren't they? So I always go out of the massage room when people get changed, make sure I knock on the door before I go back in. So, when they're having the massage, they're always, every aspect of them is covered up apart from the area I'm massaging. So it's, and when you're getting somebody to turn over from the back to the front, for instance, I lift the sort of towel so that I can't see anything on the other side of the towel when they're changing over onto their front. Quite a few things like that to make sure that I'm safe and they are safe as well. And wearing underwear for females or males is absolutely vital. If a female's having a back massage, they can leave the bra and I can unstrap it and then strap it back up for them. But they have to wear underwear. That's one policy that's really strict. If they're telling me they don't want to wear underwear, then I'm not going to do the massage. Simple as that.
What about when you're talking, I'm going, ooh, this is what I'm doing in my head. Ooh, what if somebody makes an allegation at you? How do you protect yourself here from these allegations? Because you're touching them, right?
That's a good point. I've never been down that route of allegations, but yes, that's very true.
Okay, so for me, when you go into a shop, you have to, the way I look at it is, in business, when you go into a shop, you walk in their door, what's on us? Big Brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Camera. Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have to hear everybody's conversation or whatever else or see everybody else, but they were there, weren't they? They were there, weren't they? How can you prove who was there or what's what? Me, if I was this is just something I would do. I'm not saying everybody to do. So if I was doing that and I was a lone worker and I'm working at home, I certainly would have my CCTV up and I certainly would be recording that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would have
Yeah.
that disclaimer. If they want my business and they knew it's legit and they just want to match us, you've got nothing to hide then, have they? Apart
Yeah.
from the body, we don't have to have that on their body. But when
Yeah.
you're in that space until the end that they leave, you're jeopardizing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I get
Left
that.
you nude.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a recent experience, especially with loan working, where boundaries are just chucked to the winds, really. Normally, the jobs that I do, you work on your own. But we had a situation that had escalated that one person couldn't manage. And so I was sent to help that one person that was working alone. And only to find out that the person who was reporting wrong was actually the one that was doing wrong. Being a lone worker, she had been manipulating a client, knowing that no one would know. And this person had no capacity to actually say what you're doing to me or what you're asking for is wrong. And then all of a sudden, there was a reassessment that was done, and they realized that the client is actually struggling. We think there's need for two people, and they didn't tell the lone person that we're sending an extra person. And then I was sent there. I walked into, my God, client that had been manipulated financially, physically, emotionally, and on actually expressing to her that, do you realize that you are actually the one who is crossing the boundaries in somebody else's, you're stepping into somebody else's boundaries. You're imposing yourself where you shouldn't be imposing yourself. And the interesting thing was she had no clue that what she was doing was actually not right.
That's the thing about
breaking that up was, it was something else. The person was like, oh, I don't want any training. I've been doing this for so many years, blah, 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 blah. You can go through the hoops for a long time without getting caught. Such that when you do finally get caught, you feel you're wronged when you're the one that's wrong. And she was like, I don't need training. I've done this for more years than you all. And it's difficult to start implementing boundaries if you've been breaking them for a long time. It's hard.
That's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes
breaking the cycle, isn't it?
People keep breaking those boundaries and keep making the mistakes. It catches up with them in the end. They end up on projects like
that's insanity, isn't it? So like making a mistake, or so you keep repeating the same sort of mistakes over and over.
But that's an actual.
And it's very hard to say. To acknowledge that you've made a mistake. And this is exactly what happened in that situation. Employers had missed it, and now they didn't want to acknowledge that we've actually missed this for so long. And then they tried to cover it up to protect themselves. And I got caught in the middle. I had to say to them, you know what? You people, I'm gonna maintain my own boundaries. I'm not gonna be caught in this situation where laws are being broken. I'm gonna leave, and I'm gonna do what I know is the right thing to do about it. You can hate me, you can fire me, you can do whatever you want to do, but I know my boundaries. And I stepped out, and like the last 2 weeks, they're trying to coerce me into, we will do this, we will do that. Why don't you just come back and don't talk about it? I'm like, no. You need to do what you need to do.
I was going to say that's an actual employer's fault rather than the actual member of staff, because where training is concerned, if you've got staff that have gone for years without training, I mean, we all know that even with me, I have to do CPD. It's continual professional development. So for me, I would blame
that. I don't know where she got them from. So she was ticking the boxes, but nobody was actually assessing. You say, I can speak English, but talk to me and make sure I'm speaking English. You say, I can lift 60 kgs, but actually see me carry the 60 kgs. And that's what wasn't happening. She would every year we have to update our training, And every year she was producing certificates. But employers had never actually, followed up to see where are you getting this certificate.
Wow.
And what exactly are you able to do the things that are said has been covered in this certificate of yours? They never asked that.
It doesn't even matter about the certificate. It's the actual employer. Because if the employer has policies and procedures, and when you're working with clients and going into their homes, there is five areas. We call it dignity.
Yeah.
We call it respect.
Yeah.
We call it space, which is boundaries, personal boundaries.
Yeah.
So when I'm going into a client's house, I don't take over their space.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So the boundaries start from work and also within themselves. So even themselves didn't have boundaries. Neither were they adhering to the 5 principles that their service is actually built on. And those five principles runs right through any services that is service to people where you're working with clients.
Yeah.
So clearly,
And everybody in the service industries, everybody who works with people, they know this. But what you know and what you do are 2 different things. This is what we need to be aware of. What you know and what you do are 2 different things. You can have people knowing everything but not implementing it. And this is what was happening
which is down to the employer. Again. Because the employer, their management.
It's actually no. It's not only down to employer, it's down to everybody, because I, as an employer, know the boundaries. Employer knows the boundaries. It's up to me, like I did. I said, you are not maintaining boundaries, so I'm removing myself. I'm maintaining my own boundaries. So it is employer's
but
fault.
Also, the employer, let me just say something. The employer has a responsibility for their staff as well as the clientele.
Yeah, but how much time is the employee that's doing it?
That bit, I agree with it, but also the employee has a responsibility as well.
To themselves at work.
To themselves and to the client. To themselves and to the client.
Yeah, but it's the employer's responsibility to check over their staffing.
I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing, but as well, the employee, it's his responsibility to practice what he has preached. If I tell my employer I'm going to buy bread, I should go and buy bread.
Of course.
My employer can come to me and say, you were buying bread, or you said you were going to buy bread, but you didn't buy bread. We can have a debate about that. My response to my employer following up will then determine whether it's fully the employer's fault or not. Responsibility is both ways. The new law actually says everybody is responsible for their actions.
Absolutely.
Back in the days, we used to say, oh, I did this wrong because my employer said. I went to court and I was told, are you stupid? Do you not have brains? If you knew that this is not the right thing and the employer is telling you to do it, why did you not tell the employer? Why did you not quote the law to the employer? Actually, boss, the law says that. So you have no right to tell me to do this. So
that's where boundaries will come in. That's where boundaries, that is where
but it's both ways.
Will come in. Because
yes, I agree with you.
If you understand the psychology evidence and research, which is a Milgram study, which actually showed, you know, the Milgram study. So it actually shows and actually tells you that even people in authority, where you don't have boundaries, and somebody who's in authority who is telling you to do something that isn't right, and you go ahead and do it because you're listening to the authority, that is where you don't have boundaries, because you should be able to say to somebody, I don't feel comfortable with this situation, like you did with what you were saying with the woman. When you went there to the actual, you saw that this wasn't right, and you decided, you know what, I'm taking myself out of this. Even with regards to your employers, you actually took yourself out of the situation, not only with the woman who is your colleague, you did it with your actual employer. That is very brave, and that is a strong boundaries.
Can point out that some people do stay in those positions because they need the money.
Absolutely,
I would
Kerry.
I need the money. Kerry, I need the money more than anyone knows. But one thing I've learned in life is shortcuts will never take you anywhere. I could probably have stayed there another 3 weeks and then maybe make another 1,000 something pounds. Yeah. But in those 3 weeks, there's a possibility that something could go off and the law gets involved. And then I would lose that 1,000 pounds. I would lose my reputation as an employee. I would lose my PIN. I would lose, and lose. And regaining, trust me, I'm actually in the process of regaining my standing in the work arena because I worked for 3 years. Regaining your standing is not easy. So one thing I've learned is there's no shortcut. I would rather maintain the problem that I have at the level until I'm able to uplift it than think, oh, I'll just carry on for another 3 weeks so that I can at least be there and then leave. You get me? Like right now, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to work again. I've told them I can't work with you people because you give us rules that you don't want to maintain even yourselves. So I can't work for you.
And that's the thing. You hit the nail on the head there, Fariside, because what we're saying is, this is a tip for the day. You are contracted out of your jobs. Your job description is there. So if they've got you running to the KFC, hold on a minute. Gav, am I assured to go to the KFC when I'm off premises? Because that will come into it as well when you're going to put a claim in or whatever else. Whether if you follow the wrong, if you don't stick to your job description, then you've got no claim, none.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think again, I mean, I used to show up, I used to do 14 hours a day work, and for what? I nearly busted a gut, and it showed in the end that they didn't appreciate in the end when you had to stand up against how you were being mistreated. And so when you do stand up, the consequences are you're impossible to work for anymore, and you're fired. And so there's consequences. But
I've been called that. I've been called trouble causer, but that's fine. As long as I know I'm being called that for the right reason, that is fine with me.
That's having principles, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ladies,
Standing by them.
We can talk all day, and I know that we've only just touched half the surface on about boundaries, because I'd like to talk again another time about boundaries and friendships and stuff like that, because out of this, we're dealing with internet, we're dealing with people. Okay, so the boundaries have to come with the internet. What you can do, restrictions, minimize your time, safety, all of those things. Online cyberbullying is something that I would like to talk about in the next meeting, if that's all right. And again, like I said, unless we actually physically meet people, we can't be affected. And so we are affected. And again, boundaries, you self, what you allow in life, and even discipline around spending again as well, and things like that. There is a lot of subjects that can come out of that word boundaries, and it just doesn't just stop at that word, does it? Because that's about self-respect and self-discovery, and if we're not careful, we lose our identity into somebody else's requests. And so the request in life is kindness, respect, and a little bit of understanding. We have been on here for quite a while, and I hope we can come back next week and talk again on, if we can keep coming back on a regular basis, that would be quite nice. Bring topics to the table, discuss your experiences with them, but there's too many topics to cram them all into these hours. And I mean, particularly around Fiona's background a little bit more, there's so much to your life. Susan's only just about to touch. She's the if you need like meditation and therapy and hypnotherapy, Susan does that. So she'll basically, any of this trauma that you've experienced, hey, you can speak to myself, or you can speak to Susan McCree, who's here to help you with the recovery side of things. That's what we're trying to do. Fariside's good. Again, all of us ladies here have had an experience, have overcome that experience. We're not trapped in our past. Oh no, we're not.
No.
And we're still moving forward. And so therefore we are available to have a conversation about anything you may have heard here today or experience. And if you want to take part on being on the Mom Project Mind Over Matter, look at the wings, hey.
Yeah.
Having those open discussions around awareness. If we didn't come and bring that awareness today, there are people that are going to be suffering in silence and not knowing if it's right or wrong behaviour of how they're being treated. So what if we, if nothing, we have done something but brought something to the table in different topics here today, and the repercussions of not putting boundaries. The repercussions for myself, as I haven't spoken about me not putting boundaries in place. I put boundaries into my place. I'm quite ruthless with my boundaries because it's a combination between your words and my life. And words hurt. And if you don't trust anybody, building that trust is difficult. But giving someone the benefit of the doubt that, okay, they're not going to hurt you, but you can put those boundaries in place. I'll listen to what you've got to say. And if you're affected by words and actions, then sometimes we may not want to get burnt twice, as we say put it. You might experience it once with an individual. How many times are you going to keep experiencing the same thing over and over again? If you do not like what someone is doing to you or a situation that you're in, change it. Please don't tell me you can't or you don't know how. If you don't know how, we'll find a way for you. Speak to somebody. In the workplace, you have such rights as called harassment. Does anybody know what year that is and legislation, particularly sexual harassment?
2000. No, it was sexual harassment came in
Harassment is 1986, isn't it?
80s, yeah, 80.
Yeah, we'll go. I tell you what, this is going to become.
It's about 85, 86 that came in.
I think it's 86.
It was 86.
Well, we will get that confirmed. We'll confirm that before we even leave off of here, right? Because I'm not leaving that here. But in the safety, even with yourself, Fiona, there is that policy of harassment and sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's your ace key, actually, because if somebody actually does that, I know it's going to be word against one, but like I said, there are ways of keeping you safe. I'll talk to you those backstage so I don't tell anyone. But when you are transparent in your workforce, then anything untoward that happens when you're working can be reported to the police. It's very simple, very simple. Even in a workforce, there are places like discrimination places, maybe in your town, that you can take such action against. It takes a very lot, though, to prove discrimination. I'll say that to anyone. It's a lot to try and prove discrimination. But how you do that is probably by written words. If you're getting any written words coming to your phone or messages or Facebook and it's sexual, no brainer, is it? It's there, isn't it, on a plate. So basically, to keep yourself safe, and for men that are listening to this, be careful what you say to one another. And stop putting the kisses on the end of the damn bloody message when you first met someone. Stop it. Because you don't deserve that kiss until you know someone. And I think then when people put kisses, particularly men or women, put kisses on someone's text message, on their message, they don't know them, but they put a kiss. They put a friend's request, sent a message, put a kiss. Did you know if that person has a husband or a wife? You could start domestic violence off because then somebody think they're cheating. So be careful with those kisses. Don't love too much, as I always say. Give away your love, because a lot of people also like to say, love you, bye, love you, and they don't really know you. And I hate that. It really bugs me. It's a bugbear of me. And I have to tell them, please, I'm going to tell you back because I don't know you to love you and give away your love. Why are you giving away your love so much and so freely, so quickly, so quickly? And these are the people that want to be loved. I can see it a mile away. So for me, boundaries is important. Learning about yourself and not making the same mistakes is important. Guys, last final words. Would you like to give it one tip before we leave? And this is it. So one tip of one people from each and every one of them, how to keep yourself safe.
I'd say know yourself very well. Know what you will and what you want and stick by it. It's not about the other people, it's about you.
Thank you.
I'll reiterate that. So like know your self-worth.
Thank you. Susan?
I'd say that knowing that your happiness is your responsibility. Yeah, that's what I think I'd leave it at. Knowing that your happiness is your responsibility. So boundaries is your responsibility.
Thank you. Fiona?
I think I'd say, because I've very often blamed people around me for the treatment that I've had, but I think you can't change other people's behaviours, unfortunately, but what you can do is change your own behaviour and have strong boundaries, and that's what I'm going to do from now on, because I haven't in the past. Yeah, and you need to have that.
Fiona, one thing with your massage therapy.
Yeah.
When I did do mobile therapy, one of the things that I always made sure I did, if I had to go to someone else's home, would be to always let someone know where I'm going to, where the address is.
Good point. Yeah,
my time span would be very important. When we go back to just when you were saying how we dress the body.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to also do, not only having a towel, but you know, the nurses, what the patients put on. I'd get them, bind them up, and because I know exactly, and like you said, Fiona, we as therapists, as massage therapists as well, we only, with a man, we skin cross certain areas that we know like we miss out the arousal areas. When we massage, we know what those areas are, so we know that we massage in the front and
inner thigh, the top of the inner
thigh.
We don't
touch those areas. So if we're getting somebody that is wants to be flippant, or you know, my automatic response would be, I step back from you, put my things together, I leave you right there. And one of the most important things is always letting someone know where
you to your advantage now, to lessen the load. Don't worry about it. They've got track and trace now, love. So do a track and trace in your business, and you can't go wrong.
I've also got an app on my phone called Life 360, which I have on my kids' phones as well.
I've got it as well.
Which can actually say where they are. It's a great idea, isn't it? Yeah.
Excellent.
Sorry, please, before we go, please give us that vital piece of information. What is this? I've never heard of it.
What is it?
360.
Life 360.
Go on, Fiona. Tell them what it is. I'll let you do that.
It's basically an app that you can get on your phone. So it's called Life 360. And you just put download the app onto your phone. And so, for instance, if my kids are going to school, I can see that they're in school and when they're coming back from school. Today, for instance, I have... Pardon?
Okay.
Yeah. It just shows where they are.
This is it here. It's a little, that's the 360 there.
Yeah.
Lucky for me, my neighbour, Lisa, bless her, she put it on my phone so I can track my son. So like you said, I can see when he's in school. I can see when he's coming home. I can know where he stopped. I can know everything.
Yeah. Because
is it free?
I have.
Yes.
Oh wow, even better.
So Nikki's a mum, so Nikki learned something new today. Me too. So it's a track. 360.
Well, that's what I mean. So Chantel's like she's nearly 12 and started to like to go out with her like friends after school. So it's ideal.
It is. It's a good app.
It's a good app.
Yeah.
And
thank you for that.
It tells you where you are as well.
Yeah.
Because one day my son said to me, "Oh, Mum,
that'll come in handy one day."
And then I remembered, I've got the so he can see where I am as
That's
well.
it. They can keep tabs on
Okay.
you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right, ladies.
Yeah.
Fair though.
Thank you very much. You've learned something new today. Thank you very much. Hold your best smile, please, guys. You heard the awareness today. It's boundaries, respect, discipline. And for me, mine is speaking out saves lives. Support saves so much more. We're only touching a small surface. We're just women coming together, parents here coming together, you know, telling you the flaws so you can learn from them and implement some change and some safety. We're just giving you mouth more than some people do. We're just giving you some tips and advice. Not advice, it's more mull over the
Knowledge.
things that we say. And
Suggestions, knowledge.
it's
Yeah.
up to you to implement change. So best smiles, please, guys. Thanks, guys.